Ryan grew up in the greater Sacramento area and currently resides with his family in Tahoe Park. He is a civil engineer professionally and enjoys art as an outlet from the engineering side of his head. Hey, Ryan.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good, good. I love the studio setup. Is this where you're sheltering in place? Is this your studio?
Yeah, basically this is my my little shed now. And yeah, it's a good time. I work out of here during the day, and then this was my art space before COVID.
Okay.
So yeah.
We have some great questions for you. So if you'd like, we can just go ahead and get started.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the first question, tell me about your current body of work.
Yeah, so I recently just finished up probably 6 paintings. I usually procrastinate and leave my least favorite part, the varnish and painting the edges, for last. So just finished up a few of those. I have a few examples. One's an abstract, one's a like a face or a portrait, and then I have a still life that I've been working on. So here is an example of a portrait that I just finished up. I typically work in a lot in acrylics, and every once in a while I'll mix in like an oil pastel or something, just kind of rub it on or do different things with it to add some texture and just a little more depth, kind of move the eye around a little more and try and make it pop a little bit more. So that was one of the portraits that I just finished up recently. Similarly, I've been working on some still lifes, and my wife likes to keep flowers around the house, so I'll paint them every once in a while because they're pretty. And I did a similar thing on the background here. I like it. It adds depth and a little interesting texture to my paintings. And I do a lot of just bright colors, textures. And I think that's like best exemplified usually in my abstracts. So here's an example of a smaller abstract that I just did. These are fun. I've been messing around with just a lot of colors and a lot of texture at various points throughout the painting's kind of completion. I'll sand it with different sanding tools. Like I have an orbital sander that I'll just go to town with, sand some pieces by hand. And it's kind of cool what it does. It makes sometimes some different colors pop out, different textures, ages it a little bit. I kind of like that worn look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely see the texture. I love the texture in all 3 of the pieces that you've shown.
Oh, thank you.
So just thinking about those 3 pieces, can you share with us your artistic process?
Yeah, sure. So it varies depending on the project. I typically rotate between like the abstract and the portraits have been really my focus the last couple years. And so for those like the abstracts, I'll focus on the textures and colors and layouts throughout wherever I go, just kind of looking around town. If I see an old piece of metal, rusty metal is like one of my favorite things. I'm kind of a junker. So I have a bunch of rusty metal stuff, and just try and bring out some of those textures that you see from walking around town every day. I like to travel when we can. This one, my wife says kind of looks like when you're looking down from a plane and over fields or something, and thought that was kind of cool. So that's kind of the abstracts for the people. I've met a lot of people traveling around, find interesting, talk to them in a bar, sneak a picture of them because they look interesting or they have some kind of interesting personality trait that try and capture in a painting. Some people I know really well or family members, or I've had a brief conversation with, and just trying to capture something special about them that, I don't even know what, but it's something that makes people tick.
Yeah.
So with kind of outside of those 2 types of series, I try and set up or do some special projects throughout the year. So, those can be anything from like a mural or entering into a contest, trying to get into some of those. I mess around with, I did a mosaic earlier and right when COVID started, just as kind of it makes me think a little different rather than just painting all the time. And it helps me come back to painting. And if you set something down for a little bit, it kind of reignites some inspiration or something, and it moves your work along a little bit. So like the most recent two examples that I have for some of those side projects were the Print Radio 2020 contest through Cap Radio, and Boards for Change. And for the Cap Radio, that one was a lot of fun. I got into the as a finalist, so I'm going to be in their calendar for the year, which is pretty cool. That one was a lot of fun just to think through. The theme was pretty broad that they gave. It was like, what does Cap Radio mean to you, essentially? I was like, okay, that's broad. Well, it's kind of tossing around a few ideas, and landed on communication, because that's, that's what they do. They communicate in all forms and support all forms of communication. So I thought that was appropriate, and just kind of talking to my wife a little bit one day when we were making dinner in the kitchen, and we keep like a little postcard with sign language, the alphabet and sign language on the fridge, because we've been working with our little 2-year-old, trying to teach him how to sign and different things. And just kind of was looking at it, like NPR would be kind of cool to try and do something with, and then sign language kind of popped out, and their emblem is it's essentially vertical bars with dots, and so I just turned 3 of the vertical bars into arms, and then NPR with the hands and sign language. And so it was kind of funny. I didn't read the directions as per usual, and so I did the painting in the wrong orientation. So I had to figure out, well, what am I going to do with that now? So I just ended up doing 6 of them and doing a layout so it would fit on the calendar page. And it was kind of funny, because I was just like, oh crap, should read everything. But it worked out, and it was kind of a fun project. It made me think a bit differently, and it's a challenge because I was in that contest once before, and I knew a lot of the other entries were going to be all digitally created, and so it's challenging for me to do like something as precise as I would need to if I chose to do a stencil, and so hand cut and spray paint. And so it's hard, and I've only done maybe 1 or 2 of them. So it's hard to be that precise. And I knew if I was going to compete well against these digital creations, that I would need to be a little more exact and take my time with it. And so I like doing that, because it's kind of a stretch project. Helps me grow a little bit.
Yeah, that's exciting. When does that project launch? When can we see that?
I think that calendar will come out next year.
Okay.
It's for next year. I'm not exactly sure when you can order it, but yeah, it's for the Cap Radio or Print Radio Contest 2020, and if anybody's interested, I know they're selling them at some point here soon. So,
nice.
Yeah,
Let's look into that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, how's your artistic practice changed due to COVID-19?
Yeah, so I alluded to it a little in the beginning. Like this studio is my art space. And so this was where I would come to just kind of disengage from engineering, because it I don't know, like any job, it can be exhausting. So art's been kind of my little exit away from that part of my head, and kind of gets me into some thinking a different way. But COVID forced me, I've been working out of the studio during COVID, during the day. And so it was just kind of, I had to adjust to that. It wasn't like a huge adjustment compared to what could have been. And so I feel pretty lucky about that. But just to address that question, like I just had to adjust to learning how to set engineering down and pick up art in the same space. And so I had to be very intentional about, okay, I'm going to put my computer and all my notes away if I want to paint that day or that night, and then come back into this space and kind of give it a little time to make that head adjustment, because it's hard to just turn something on.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have a question, my own question. How does your how does your engineering practice relate to your work? Where does that show up in your work?
Yeah, so I overthink my projects a bit. I try and plan them out sometimes, but really it's kind of the absence. Like that's why I like abstract so much, because it's almost like the absence of precision.
Yeah.
And when you think about math and engineering, you have to be fairly precise. And so it allows me to do that, like separate from it, but it also shows up in just kind of with my approach, especially with the special projects, like how I want to plan them out. Like I'm a civil engineer, and so planning is a thing, and I have to plan out projects, and I'm a project manager, and so I will take that approach with my own art projects, especially the contests and different things. So just kind of being strategic on how I want to put something together. I've been trying to bring in more shapes, I guess. So squares, rectangles, some circles. It shows up in my abstracts, and just with some of my textures, I try and work in a lot of different shapes and do different things with them. But yeah, kind of in those ways, it's kind of, sometimes it's an absence of engineering, and sometimes I use the skills that I've learned from that for project planning, putting together a painting, and then sometimes incorporating some of the textures and shapes that I've seen throughout my career in it.
What I really liked, I was browsing through your Instagram, and in a lot of your work, the abstract work and the portraiture, I seen lines. I seen a lot of lines, and I was wondering if that was an intentional part of your process, or something that you wanted to include.
Sometimes it is very intentional, yeah, and sometimes it happens. It's interesting because I've noticed that too, and I think it also goes to speak to the tools that I use for painting, especially in the abstracts. I rarely paint with a brush. I do a lot of. Have you ever textured a wall?
No.
No. So I housework, and just grew up doing a little bit of grunt work and construction, and so texturing and doing different things with tools, and not necessarily like paint tools. So it's basically a spatula, a big metal spatula. I have a few of those, and it's yeah, and so it's not a typical tool, and so it just creates a lot of cool patterns, interesting textures, and when you push down hard on it, sometimes the gesso or the paint will squeeze out and will leave certain lines, and I like those just because they add something to it, and it adds something that connects different pieces of the painting together and draws your eye from one side to another. And so I typically keep those just because I like them, and they are somewhat intentional, but not always.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I'll say I like about Verge producing these conversations with artists, because I actually have never seen your work. So I'm being introduced to you for the first time, and I love it. I love that that biggie behind you. I love all of your work. But before we leave, can you share with all of us where we can see more of your work, where we can follow you?
Yeah.
Where we can purchase your work? Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. It's kind of my main hub, I guess. That's where I just kind of put everything when I finish something, or if I do something fun. My handle's at Dominguez. And then I just kind of put up a website, so it's in beta phase right now. But it's up, and it has a decent amount of my stuff up there. I've been trying to load more up as I can. That's www.rdomindustrial.com.
Perfect. We'll make sure to put that in the chat.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan.
Oh, thank you. This is
really
great.
Nice to speak with you and to be introduced to your work. And I look forward to seeing more of your work and talking to you more.
Great. Thank you. Have a good day.
You as well.